Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Howdy, friends, and welcome to the Ted Lasso Recap Podcast. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and I am thrilled to be here with y'all today. Now, folks, if you're like me, you can't get enough of Ted and the gang over at AFC Richmond. But that is why I am here, to dive deep into every episode of this wonderful show and share my thoughts and insights with all of you lovely folks out there. In this show, we're going to laugh, we're going to cry, and we're going to have a heck of a good time doing it. So grab your biscuits, settle in, and let's get started, shall we, with Season 3, Episode 12, So Long Farewell. This aired May 31st, 2023, directed by Declan Lowney? I don't know. That's a Looney Tune Lowney name. In this episode, it is the final episode of not only this season, it is the final episode of this series, the last episode that will ever happen, will ever come out for Ted Lasso. Richmond also plays their last game. We get the conclusion to all of our favorite characters as they all tragically die. Now, that's not really what happens, but we do get, I think we get a pretty good closure to all of our characters, right? Maybe a little hint of a spinoff. I could see, and I will talk about it in this breakdown, but I can see where they could. I've been kind of saying that was a possibility, Ted leaving, going back home, and maybe they could spin it off, change the title. They got all these great characters. They could definitely spin it off. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't think that'll happen, but they definitely could. You know, crazy things happen with Hollywood and TV shows and movies. If this makes enough money, Apple, I could see spinning it off. Rebecca, unsure if she will stay as well as Ted leaves. Obviously, that was the bomb he was dropping in the last episode. The Diamond Dogs grow to their largest membership of the entire series. Some of my predictions for this season came true, while others fell short, as always. Either way, it was an emotional farewell to one of the most positive shows I've ever seen on TV. One of the most positive shows by far. And I'm going to try not to cry during this recap. I'm going to try. I'm not going to guarantee anything. But this will be the last episode of the recap I do for this show. But I will do a season/series review that will come out next Tuesday on this feed. On my TV show/movie review podcast that comes out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It will be coming out tomorrow, so if you want to get a head start on it, go over and subscribe to that podcast if you want to hear my thoughts on the final season of Ted Lasso as a whole, as well as the entire series, I should say. I will be talking about that on that other podcast, or just subscribe to this, and it will come out next Tuesday. But the events of this final episode starts with the pundits, who are people that I didn't really cover that much. I didn't really focus too much on the pundits. I focused even less on the in-game announcers that were kind of a fun aspect of the show. They had a little fun back and forths. The guys that had little blocky block thing on their microphones, very interesting microphones they used, didn't really bother with talking about them or even knowing their name. But we start with the pundits, the on-screen pundits, which Roy was at one point, talking about Richmond's chance of winning the Premier League. Rebecca, basically, they have to win their game, but then I think Man City also has to leave, or West Ham has to lose their game. Rebecca is watching these pundits, the sports show, in her kitchen. And they also mention that Rupert is in hot water. Obviously, the end of last episode, Bex and Rupert's former assistant showed up at Rebecca's house asking for her advice. So now we're seeing at this episode that has kind of come out in the press, Rupert, his indiscretions. And so that they're talking about that as well. And they mentioned that Rupert should have stayed with Rebecca, that they were the real power couple, which, of course, she doesn't like to hear that. Then we see something that I think a lot of people wanted to happen. I think a lot of people wanted to see Ted Lasso and Rebecca come together as a union, as a couple, but I never did personally. I actually liked Rebecca and Sam together, which, of course, that didn't happen again once they broke it off in the last season. But Ted is there in the morning, got bedhead, and asks if she wants to talk about it, if she's comfortable talking about it. Obviously, they are referring to the bomb he dropped, but this scene, this opening scene to this episode, implies that Ted and Rebecca slept together. But that is what is meant to be assumed. But then you see Coach Beard come out. He's wearing a thong, right? Happily telling them good morning. So it's like, what happened now? Beard is there too. Did they have a freaky fun time? And then, of course, Beard's girlfriend comes out as well. Jane Payne comes out wearing one of Rebecca's blazers as a dress. And it's pretty clear that, the episode, they like to do a lot of this stuff, the misdirection stuff. Ted and Rebecca talking about wine delivery, but obviously sounding like women's menstrual cycles. And then this opening scene kind of implying certain things, but clearly we know. We finally get some clarity to the situation. But they all crashed at Rebecca's place because there was a gas leak at the apartment at the neighborhood where Ted and Beard live. So they stayed at Rebecca's place. And Rebecca doesn't want to talk about the bomb that Ted dropped, which we all know. I guessed it early. I mean, it's so clear the entire season. Ted wants to go home. Ted's need to go home. Especially after his mom came. It's like, your son misses you. And Ted cries. It's like, duh. Right? He's been wanting to go home this whole season. So not surprising. And obviously we know this show is ending. So of course he's going to go home. She doesn't want to talk about it. And she's not sad that he's going home. She's sad that he's not coming back. Right? So, and it's at this point implied that Beard is going home with him. Beard sympathized with Rebecca not being happy about Ted not coming back. Then the maid shows up. The bit of the maid showing up at the most inopportune times. And this time she shows up as you got Beard in a thong. You got Ted with a bedhead. You got Jane in one of Rebecca's blazers. And the maid drops her things. She's like, I'll start in the guest bedroom. To which Beard realizes what's the damage that's been done to the guest bedroom and the paraphernalia that they used, that they apologized for keeping Rebecca up for their loud night last night. And they go run after the maid to not throw away the ropes and the other things that they used, which is very funny. Back to the locker room at Richmond. Isaac is playing judge. The team is getting together, and they collect funds apparently for infractions that different teammates have made, and they're going over those infractions. And judgment befalls them, and they are told to donate. Where Nate has a decorative box, very similarly to the first season, where Nate made a decorative box, and people put in their suggestions. Their anonymous suggestions of what Ted can change, can fix around there, like the horrible water pressure in the showers, and where Jamie put in a piece of chewing gum into the mouth of the box. But Isaac, playing the judge, Will announces him after setting his gavel down on the chair that is kind of in that center little stage area that's in their locker room that Sam sat in while Isaac cut his hair before his date with Rebecca. Right, so he's got his throne, the judge's throne. Isaac comes in wearing a wig, and Will puts his little gavel down there. and Nate, who is now the assistant kit man. I was expecting the redemption arc for Nate. I was expecting Nate to go back to Richmond. I was not expecting him to be the assistant kit man. Makes no sense why Nate would go back as the assistant kit man, which he, a fun little joke, assistant to the kit man, which is kind of an Office reference joke, which I think is funny. Dwight Schrute, right? Office to the general manager or whatever he called himself. Makes no sense. Obviously, it's the last game of the season, so I guess it just to get him back in the fold. But he should have been a coach. It makes no sense. He's valuable as a coach. But at least he's back as the assistant to Will, which is kind of nice, I guess, in some ways. Still. But he has his decorative box. And Sam says the money they collect will be used at Sam's restaurant for the after party after the game. And the fines for showing up late. Danny, one person gets fined for showing up late. Danny gets fined for not texting happy birthday to a player. Jamie gets fined for falling asleep during team meditation. Nathan gets fined for missing every training session, every game, and team dinner. He gets fined £5,000, right? Obviously, Nate was making good money as the manager over at West Ham, so he's got the money. He's not hurting for money. Like, even the fact that he was a waiter for a minute over at Taste of Athens was ridiculous. But the majority of the money coming from Nate. And so with that money tallied, Sam announces that the party will have an open bar and live band karaoke. Roy scares Keely as she shows up to Richmond and still seems as though they are still only friends. So despite the fact they were both kind of the parents to Jamie in the last episode, trying to find out what was wrong with him, trying to make him feel better, to get him ready to play. And despite the fact that Roy told Keely that he wants to be more than friends, and seeing she was about to respond, seemingly respond in a way to say, nah, I don't think so. But we never got that. Roy going to give Jamie's mom a hug and Keely kind of pulling away almost indicated maybe the opposite, that maybe she did want to be more than friends. But regardless, they are still just friends. We never get... That is one aspect of the show, the way this season ends. We never find out if Keely got back with Roy or if she got back with Jamie, which is a potential in this episode, or if she just maintained friends with both of them. There's no closure to any of that, which is kind of a bummer. The fact that Nate didn't come back as a coach, kind of a bummer. He is back at Richmond, but not as a coach. I imagine the next season he is reinstated as a coach, but as of the end of this show, he is not. Cut to Ted getting a text from his ex-wife, Michelle, letting him know that his son is happy to hear that he's coming back home. Beard's girlfriend shreds his passport so that he can't leave to go home. And not really surprising, he still is intending on leaving, but you know, it seems pretty clear that he's going to stay there. And the off and on relationship that Beard had with Jane throughout the show, even though it was kind of in the background, it's in many ways it's toxic, but they're made for each other. Trent handing out the early copy of his book. Obviously, it's not finished because the season isn't finished, but he wants to get Ted and Beard's impression of it before they leave. And the title is called The Lasso Way, which is something that he mentioned in the first article that he wrote about Ted in season 1, The Lasso Way. Roy shows up pissed, asking the same question Nate was asking earlier on in this a few episodes ago, asking how do you know if a girl likes you or not. Ted recommends rounding up the Diamond Dogs, right? Nate could see how they, for Nate in this situation, considering Roy is asking the exact same question, Nate can actually see what their answer would have been if he was there to ask them. But Roy walks away yelling no, still opposed to being part of the Diamond Dogs. Even though he had a one-time pass in the one episode when they were all worried about stuff. He was worried about none of his pictures were used in the article about Keely. And he was worried about that. He's worried that she's moving past him, that things are going to change, which he ran away from, and that's why he broke up with her. But he's still refusing to be part of the Diamond Dogs. Ted, getting back to Trent's book, tells him he's excited to dive into it. Beard already has and is crossing out parts of it, yelling critiques at Trent. And Trent can't take it, so he just leaves. Cut to Keely asking Rebecca PR questions, comments on Rupert's divorce, and Rebecca says no comment. Then Keely asks for herself, like as a friend, if she has any comments on his divorce, and she still has no comments. Higgins boos her answer. Obviously, Higgins is there and wants to know what her thoughts are on all that. And they move on to discuss who will replace Ted. And he threw in a basketball coach from New Zealand. Higgins hands her a list of potential replacements. And he threw in a basketball coach from New Zealand to spice things up a little bit. And Keely gives her a stare, obviously in support of Roy being the next coach. Rebecca doesn't want to think about any of that yet, so she doesn't even entertain any of that stuff. Higgins recommends selling 49% of the club to the fans in order to buy more players. She would still maintain control with 51%, but that would give them more money to buy players, upgrade the stadium, and all these things. And Rebecca asks how much she would get if she just sold the whole thing. So Rebecca contemplating possibly just leaving as herself. She's already beaten Rupert in many ways. She's no longer even concerned with beating Rupert anymore. She just wanted to win, as she said earlier on in the season. And Keely not happy with that question. And she only got into it to ruin Rupert's life, that's Rebecca says. And, and he's doing good enough job on that on his own. Higgins tells her that she would get $2 billion. And she spits out her tea. Cut to practice. Roy calls them in. Ted not wanting the last practice to be a big deal. Roy gives them kind of an ominous, yeah, sure, whatever you guys, want type of a thing. Then the music starts to play and the players start to sing the song from Sound of Music. That is the title of this episode. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye, 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 goodbye. Adieu, good night, all this stuff. Fun little music moment with the players as we've seen them do, with the bye, bye, bye and sync dance that was supposed to be for Dr. Sharon, but she, kind of tried to do an Irish goodbye. After Ted thanks them all for the great performance, says it was perfect, and of course, as Ted has opened up the practices to the fans, the stadium or the seats are all filled with fans as well. So when he says it was perfect, all the players and all the fans celebrate, tear off their shirts. They're stoked that they, nailed this amazing little musical moment for Ted. And then there's this long one-take shot of Keely walking through Richmond, saying hello to everybody, including Nate, who is back. Keely drops off some goodbye presents for Ted and Beard that she says that they should wait until they're on the plane to open them. Or if they want to not leave at all, and they could open them now. She heads into the locker room as she did in the first season, right? Covering her eyes like, oh, I hope you guys are all decent. And then she looks and they are. And she's, boo. Very similar to how we were first introduced to Keely in the first season, possibly the first episode. But she tells the team that there's the press conference later. Jamie chases her down and out to the hallway to tell her about this Nike deal. They're sending him out to Brazil for this promo, and he demands that he'll only go if his publicist goes, which is Keeley. And at first she's like, no, I don't want to go. And she changes her mind, or she breaks that farce and says, of course she wants to go. And she gives him a big hug and tells him that she's proud of him. So she's super excited, happy for Jamie that he's getting this opportunity. And as they both kind of go their separate ways, Roy comes down the hallway and follows Jamie into the locker room to invite him to have a beer after practice or later on. And Jamie's down. So then Nate walks by and is happy to see Roy and Jamie friends now. Because, of course, he missed that whole bonding thing that happened. And then you have the fans at the pub. Rebecca and her mom are also there. And she mentions selling the team. Her mom is super supportive of that. You can go explore the world, explore who you are, explore yourself. Rebecca shares a dream that she had about being a cabaret singer in Japan, and her mom is shocked. She's like, I had the same dream, except for you were a dentist in Taiwan. And she keeps having this saying, potato, potato, right? You say potato, I say potato. And then she brings up the psychic, and Rebecca tells her that she's a horrible person, just preys on people, which is an interesting, out of the aspects of this final season, the psychic and the predictions have felt so back burner and haven't felt impactful in any way, despite the fact that things kind of happen, but they aren't like, they don't feel important in any way, right? Like the green matchbook, the shite and knighting armor thing, and then of course the things like you're gonna have a family, but then she goes to the doctor, finds out she can't have kids, but it's pretty obvious. At least my assumption was that maybe that would change. I expected her to get back with Sam, which that never happened, but there was that mystery man who did clearly have a child as she walked through his boat, and one of the rooms was clearly a kid's room. So that may be what happened, but he hasn't even shown up. I was thinking that he might be, find out who she is in the news, see her in the news, and come to say hi. It's like, I figured out how you work, 'cause they never exchanged names. But the whole psychic thing felt very... It seemed like it was going to be a bigger part of this season and really felt underwhelming. But Rebecca, mad at her still, doesn't want to hear her predictions because she said, the psychic told me they predicted what was going to happen. She's like, I don't want to hear it. Let's take a quick break from this episode because I want to promote. Are you looking for a way to take your love of The Ray Taylor Show to the next level? Look no further than Inspired Disorder Plus. As a member, you'll get access to a whole host of amazing perks, including the full week of shows, ad-free in both audio and video versions, a live painting archive, early access to the many faces, members-only discounts and deals, a podcast back catalog with over 600 episodes. But that's not all. As a member, you'll get access to my personal blog as well as my creative writing. You'll also get the chance to ask me anything you want. With all of these benefits and more, Inspired Disorder Plus is a must-have for any fan of The Ray Taylor Show. So don't wait. Go sign up now. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and start enjoying all of the amazing perks of the membership. And now, let's get back to the show. After that, May comes over, the owner of the pub, and makes a joke about how Rebecca's generation has had it, how hard. She comes over and it makes a joke about how Rebecca's generation, how hard they've had it. And they found out that the fans, the 3 fans that have been there throughout the show, paid their bill, paid Rebecca and her mom's bill as a thank you for what they've done with the team. It's a great moment, The fans have been great, too, because, we get the 3 fans. We find out who their names are at the end of this episode, but I didn't bother to write them down or anything. But they've been great. From just everybody being the kind of surrogate for the overarching fandom of the team, how they hated Ted. And then even when in this season when they were brought in to watch the training and seeing when Ted trying to teach the players total football and having them switch roles, and there's the funny scene where Danny acts like Isaac and Isaac acts like Danny, and then the fans decide to change roles as well, and the overly optimistic guy is now the cynic and angry, and it doesn't fit him well and everybody else. It's like they've been a fun, and given the one night out with Beard and how Beard hooked them up, and they get to have fun at their teams, the field at night. Great. Like, they've had so many great moments over the season, the series, and for them to, pay the bill for Rebecca and her mom was a great little moment. And they came over to thank her, what she's done for the team, and tell her that she's like the mom they never had. And it's the first moment that got me choked up. One of many moments in this final episode that got me choked up. And it's true, because she's been like, Ted was like the dad and Rebecca like the mom, and this team and the fans and everything is like their kids in many ways. And at that time when I'm seeing this, I'm like, maybe this is these are the children this psychic meant, right? Not the mystery man. Cut to Trent, obsessed, watching Ted read his book, waiting for a reaction from Ted, waiting for him to laugh. And Ted kind of like gives a nose breathe in a certain way that makes Trent spring to his feet and over to see what part of the book he was reacting to. And Ted tells Trent nobody likes the laugh police. And Ted's energy very flat through most of this episode, which I didn't like. Ted, very happy guy. I would say, he's definitely had his moments, right? Angry at Nate the first season where he got drunk after he signed the divorce papers. We've definitely seeing him cuss out his mom in the last episode. Like, we've seen different sides to Ted, but in general, he's a happy guy. And it seems like for sure this episode, very flat. Like, there's whole scenes where he says 3 words. Like, he's not very much the Ted Lasso we've come to know, which is kind of a bummer. Would have loved to see just a little bit more. Come on, give me the regular Ted. It makes sense for the character that he's not super happy. It's very melancholy for him to, this is leaving these people to go back to his son and his life back in Kansas. Roy and Jamie out at the pub. Jamie chugs his beer because with all the training he's been doing, he's not been allowed to have beer, and that was worth the wait. Roy tells him, regardless of how the game goes on Sunday, he's proud of him and the work that he's put in. Jamie thanks him for all of his help and his encouragement. Right, great moment between those two. Roy tells him that he hopes that the feelings he has for Keeley doesn't get in the way of their friendship. And Roy mentions that they started talking again, that him and Keeley started talking again. Jamie clarifies that there's nothing official between the two of them. And then Roy tells him to step aside, and Jamie says no. Right, and then this is starting to stress me out between the two of them because I kind of see where this is going. Then Roy mentions that they were actually together a lot recently than Jamie thinks because of they were together a month ago when the whole thing happened where they slept together at the same time. Rupert tried to get back with Rebecca. So Roy tells him that they were together a lot sooner than he thinks. And then Jamie tells Roy that the video that was leaked was for him. So it's like this back and forth of like, oh boy, this is not going to be good. Cut to Ted sitting in the stands at Richmond, kind of like we see the beginning of every episode of Ted Lasso, him in the stands sitting by himself. Rebecca shows up, which is the background to this episode. Rebecca shows up, saying she's ready to talk about it finally. And she tells him she's decided to sell the club, right? If you go, I go. She also brings up the option that they both stay. She tells him that his son can move there with Michelle. He can go to the best schools. Michelle can get her teaching credentials and become a department head at a school, right? Kind of laying out this amazing future that his family can have if he moves them to the UK. And then she says that she mentions if she sells 49%, that she can, make him one of the highest paid coaches in the league, right? This is like her last chance to keep Ted, to convince Ted to stay. And she says that she would feel like, still, even if he was, like, I'm already getting choked up, that even if she paid him a lot more, she would still feel like he was still underpaying him for what he has brought to the club. And I'm getting choked up now just recalling that, because he has been. It's amazing. And he hasn't said anything yet, right? This scene, she posted, the actress that plays Rebecca posted on it. I've been getting flooded on Instagram with Ted Lasso posts, but she broke down how many words she said, which was like almost 200 words, and Ted only says like 3 or 4 words, which is very clear. It's very noticeable when Ted doesn't say anything. And in this scene, he's just like clearly listening to everything she says, but not saying anything really until the very end. And he's sticking to his decision. So she will stick to her decision to leave as well. And they kind of share a laugh over the thought of traveling. Right, Ted kind of says, you're going to do this like eat, pray, love style thing. And Rebecca's like, well, I was thinking more drink, sleep, fuck type of a thing, which Eat, Pray, Love I watched recently for a top 5 episode that I do on Sundays. And I could see Rebecca doing something like that. I think she knows herself a lot more than Julia Roberts' character knows herself in Eat, Pray, Love. Like, I think Rebecca's pretty actualized as a person. But knowing what she would want to do after this, who knows? But it's a very touching moment between the two of them. Cut to Roy and Jamie showing up to Keely's house. Jamie's got a nosebleed. Roy's shirt is torn. So clearly this battle has gone physical. And she finds out that they were fighting over her. Then they had the brilliant idea to go to her house and make her choose, which of course it's it was very clear that that's where it was going to go, and very clear how horrible of a decision. I don't know if this has happened in this show, but that's something that happens so often in shows or movies where dudes will fight over. It probably happened in Bridget Jones. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened in Bridget Jones, and probably is in reference to that, since there are so many references to romantic comedies in this show. But horrible idea, right? Never works out every time it happens. Cut to her just closing the door on them still back outside, and they realize how stupid they are, and they just decide to go get a bite to eat. Cut to Ted leaving Richmond for the night, finds Nate staring at the spot on the wall above the coach's door where the Believe sign used to be. Ted walks in, scares the crap out of Nate because he's kind of mesmerized, and Nate apologizes and breaks down. I start to cry too. Another moment, I'm like, oh, this is horrible. This episode's so tough. I start to cry as Nate gives Ted a big hug, apologizes. Of course, Ted is very accepting and like forgives him. I mean, he's the reason he's back. He was like instantly forgave him and was brilliantly convinced reminded Coach Beard of second chances, and we got to find out about Coach Beard's whole backstory when he goes to confront Nate at his apartment at the end of the last episode. So Nate breaks down, and Ted mentions how he can still see the sign up there where it was, and Nate says that he thinks that's very lovely, the whole thing, and still very flat tone from Ted, still very flat from him. while everybody else around him is very emotional. Like, Ted is playing this whole thing very calm, cool, and collected, very muted, which is clearly very different from Ted, and everybody else is very emotional around Ted, including me watching this. Cut to the game day, and the dude that Rebecca had the date with, right, that went on the double date with Roy and Keeley, and Roy's like, this is not the guy you should be with. And then that guy met some other woman telling the story about how he almost like punched this actor that was at a meet and greet or whatever, or some play or whatever. So it's, I don't know if they're married or girlfriends or whatever, but they're showing up to the game. Colin's partner shows up and picks up tickets under Winona Judd tickets at the thing. You have fans nervous at the pub, worried that if their team wins that they'll have nothing to strive for after that. Henry and Michelle back at home, ready to watch the game. You have Dr. Jake showing up talking shit about soccer and how it's probably going to end with a 0-0 tie, which is definitely, like, before watching this show, and I still haven't watched. I'm not a fan of soccer, but I kind of agree with him. But when it comes to this show, like, come on, man, this is Ted Lasso. Him talking shit about that, which is kind of surprising that that's even still a thing, that guy's still around. But cut to Ted going over the confusion of the leagues and what they're called and what qualifies being in each of the different leagues. And Ted says it makes no sense. Roy tells him that it's all about money, which that's, of course, makes sense. If things don't make sense on a for logical reasons, it's usually due to money. That's basically what destroys any kind of logic when you see so many of the problems we have in the world and how so many things don't make sense. It's usually because of money. Nate shows up to wish them good luck. Higgins mentions how all the guys in the office looks familiar, got the old Diamond Dog crew with Nate back and all that. The old crew with Nate and the new crew with Trent. And Roy finally officially asks to be part of the Diamond Dogs. So not only is Nate back, but Roy is going to officially is joining as well. And they all freak out. They think he's pranking them, right? Everybody, including Nate, looking for hidden cameras. But he spent the last year trying to change. For Keeley, after the breakup, trying to change, only to find out that he's still the same him. And he asks if people can change. And Nate and Beard are kind of, I would say, proof that people can change if given a second chance. Trent speaks up. And he says, we don't change as much as we accept the person we've always been. Which I guess that's kind of true. Understanding the person you are and just trying to be the best version of yourself. Right? Nate says that they can change. Sometimes the worst, sometimes the better. People can change for the worse. Sometimes obviously Nate knows that better than anybody. He turned into the worst version of himself and was given an opportunity to be who he really is. And then Ted mentions him becoming a Diamond Dog. That Roy becoming a Diamond Dog at all is a big change in and of itself. And then they talk about perfection in art. All around them, there's perfection. There's perfect pieces of art, But perfection doesn't exist in people. Higgins mentions the best we can do is to keep asking for help and accepting it. And if you keep doing that, then you'll be moving towards better, which I think is a brilliant asking for help. Just the attempt to try and be a better person, to ask for help. You're moving in the right direction. And they all kind of bark. And Roy asks if anybody else has anything to say. And Nate mentions that he's got a girlfriend now named Jade, and that she's perfect, which of course we don't see. I don't think we see Jade at all in this episode, but of course, very pivotal point, very influential person. The reason why Nate is back at Richmond is because of her. Cut now to Rupert goes to see his new manager, which is the former Richmond coach that was the pundit for a while. Rebecca meets him in the owner's box along with Sassy, so we get to see Sassy for one last time. And she says it's a good day for him. No matter what happens, one of the teams that he loves is going to win. And Sassy is sure to give him a lot of shit for, potentially losing another team because of his, his infidelity. Saying he goes through teams like he goes through wives or hemorrhoid cream, which is a great shit talking to Rupert. Then you have Keeley and Barbara and Higgins' wife are all there waiting for Rebecca and Sassy to show up in their seats. Will comes into the locker room with a care package that Zava sent. It's shirts for everybody and the largest avocado. Looks like a giant rugby ball, this avocado. Danny has a gift / apology for Van Dam, right, who's still scared of him. Turns out this gift is a new mask. Looks like a Zorro mask, so Van Dam changes his name back to Zorro, but pronounced Zorro this time. Isaac says, right, he looks like a superhero, which dude has been. I think it was the last episode, Zorro Van Dam blocked so many shots on goal. Like, he is such a big reason why this team is where they're at, with his amazing defense as goalie. Cut to Ted. Comes in and compliments Van Dam's new mask, and who gets corrected, wants to be called Zorro again. And instead of a pep talk, Ted, who says he's kind of all tapped out, Coach Beard has a presentation for him, and he puts on a video. And as all of the videos so far this season that Beard has put on have had the wrong reaction that he has intended, it's very sentimental music. It's got highlights of the team over the past 3 seasons, back when Roy was a player himself, Sam's haircut moment, the Christmas with the Higgins. While the video plays, you see Beard realizing that he's made everybody all emotional, and now he's worried. Cut to the teams out on the pitch, pre-game, before the game starting. Everybody on Richmond's all crying and emotional. Even Roy fighting back the tears. Then Zorro blocks a shot after the game starts. Danny just misses a goal. West Ham gets a goal. Dr. Sharon we see watching the game nervously. We have Richmond not playing well, and sounds of phones in the audience updating fans that Manchester is up 1 goal. Similarly to the first season, where all of the phones in the audience, it's where Ted realizes the use of having a tie, that episode, when the phones were all going off and realizing that all they needed is a tie. Now we're seeing this as hearing these phones go off to find out Manchester is up 1 goal. West Ham gets another goal. So now at the half, West Ham is 2, Richmond at 0. And Ted doesn't give him much of a pep talk during the halftime either. Just more of do your best, but also very proud of them and what they've accomplished over these years. And he looks back to point at the believe sign, but of course it's not there. Then Sam gets up and puts the centerpiece, that little island in the center of the locker room, a piece of the believe sign that he kept. And then we see all the players. Jamie has a piece. Isaac has a piece. All the players had a little piece of the believe sign. And they all kind of put it together, and they all have a little piece, and they all kind of piece it all together like a puzzle. And they all put their hands in along with Nate. Nate gets in there as well. And Ted says, a lot of people say there's no place like home, but there ain't a whole lot of places like AFC Richmond either. Very emotional. And they come out playing good. Danny, Sam, Colin, all just barely just hitting the post on the goal, hitting the frame, and then Tart gets one in the net, right? And I'm choked up. It's like, yes, right? They get it. Just the sports emotion of watching sports, getting emotional. West Ham goes hard at Tart, right? And he plays along, able to draw a penalty. And Jamie gives the ball to Danny to kick the penalty goal, which would be the first time since season 2 since he killed their mascot, the first episode of season 2. But then Danny gives it to Isaac, who tries to pass it to Colin, but insists that, have fun. And this is the first penalty shot of Isaac's career. You see the Richmond Greyhound dog scared. And it looks like he completely missed. But in the replay, you see that he actually kicked the ball through the net. The refs stop it and see where the ball tore through. And you get a different angle that shows it going through. And Rupert storms out as they tie it up 2-2. Right? You got Jamie's goal, and then you got Isaac's goal. And in the replay, you see the ball go through the net. And it hits one of the fans in the face, and turns out it's Rebecca's ex, the dude she went out with, who likes violence, so he's got a bloody nose and kisses his wife or fiance or whatever, and she's got his blood on him, right? Which of course Barbara loves. She stands up celebrating the blood because that's what she loves the most. Which the first game she saw was in this season when, after Beard tried to pep the team up by showing him the video of Nathan tearing up the sign. So she's all about the violence of the sport. Let's take a quick break from this episode because I want to talk about, are you looking for the perfect gift for that art lover in your life? Look no further than InspiredDisorder.com. Our gift cards can be used to purchase original artwork from The Many Faces, a collection of over 2,000 original abstract ink portraits. These one-of-a-kind pieces make for a truly unique and meaningful gift. But that's not all. Our gift cards can also be used to purchase high-quality prints and t-shirts featuring these amazing paintings. Plus, if the recipient is a fan of The Ray Taylor Show, they can use the gift card to purchase merchandise from the show as well. So why wait? Head on over to InspiredDisorder.com and purchase a gift card today. Your loved one will be sure to appreciate the thought and creativity behind such a unique gift. Thank you for considering InspiredDisorder.com for all of your gift needs. And now, back to the show. And they take a break to replace the net. Rupert is on the field and orders the manager to take Tart out. And the manager refused to play that way. Rupert pushes him to the ground. And then as Rupert leaves, the crowd chanting wanker, right? Just as they did to Ted in the beginning, right? It's like so much of how this show starts, we're seeing happen again, but for the context is completely different. Where now Rupert is the one that everybody in the stands is calling a wanker, and everybody's celebrating Ted, right? It's such like Rupert has become the thing that Rebecca had always wanted him to become, right? The villain. West Ham gets another goal, but Ted is laughing because despite not knowing offsides for the whole season, he calls 14 was offsides. So Ted finally learning what offsides is, and they get another penalty. And Richmond coaching staff struggling to come up with a play, and they ask Nate for help, and it's the first play that Nate came up with in the first season, with using Jamie as a distraction, to draw the coverage and pass it off to Sam so that he can score a wide open goal, right? It is the first play that Nate ever gave to Ted that they tried out. And the way Tart plays it is exactly how Ted played it in that episode, where he's like, I'm right here, give me the ball, like very overacting. Nate is playing that to the T, exactly. So he draws the extra coverage, leaving Sam open, and scores the winning goal. Nate jumps into Ted's arms, as he did in that first game that is in the picture that he signed to Ted, thanking him for everything that he's done for him. The fans run out onto the pitch, and Colin finally gets his dream come true, where he gets to kiss his partner on the field after a win, the same way all of the other players get to kiss their girlfriends. Colin kisses the partner that we saw earlier in the season, the partner that we saw get the Winona Judd tickets. Beautiful moment. Keely and Sassy telling Rebecca, look what you fucking did. Right? You did this. And she's like, I didn't do this. Ted Lasso doing the same dance that he did with the football players, right? The running man and all that stuff that we saw in the first episode. Just beautiful. Beautiful how all of this stuff is just coming back. And cut to Ted at the airport, looking at the headlines on the paper. Rupert out after his stunt with the pitch, pushing the manager. And then paper next to it saying that Rebecca sold the 49% to the fans. She's not leaving. The same fan that recognized Ted in the first episode wanting an Ussie. Same guy sees him again, asks him for an Ussie. And we find out Richmond got second place after all. So they didn't actually win. My prediction that they were going to win the trophy didn't come true. But Rebecca's at the airport too. She bought a ticket to get through security so she could say goodbye to Ted. Ted notices that she bought a first-class ticket, and she said, it's out of habit. I didn't mean to do that. But he points out that she decided to stay. He noticed. She sold that 49%. And she says that, he's going back to be with his family, and she wants to stay with her family, which, after the fans told her, it makes perfect sense. And they thank each other at the same time, give each other a hug. That guy notices Ted. Beard, so they get on the plane. Beard is on the plane, didn't expect him to be there. Ted second guesses leaving at the last moment, right? Beard says he can't do this. He can't go. He doesn't want to go. He's in love with Jane, and he asks Ted for permission to run off the plane and into her arms. And Beard feels like he would be abandoning Ted, and he doesn't want to do that because he knows Ted's history with his dad. And we find out Coach Beard's name is Willis, as they say they love each other. And since the door is already closed, Willis has a plan. He splashes water on himself and starts screaming and holding his appendix, saying, my appendix. Cut to him being taken off the plane. A flight attendant asks Ted if he wants to join his friend, and he's like, no. And she walks away, calling him an asshole, which is funny. Rebecca leaving the airport and sees this girl running towards her and falling down in front of her. And she goes to see if this little girl's okay. Turns out the little girl belongs to that mystery man who is a pilot. And she finally introduces herself to him. So we see that the psychic was true. I assume they get married. He has a kid. That's how she's going to have a family. Obviously, the connection Rebecca had with this mystery man was beautiful. It was like the one moment where we see her finally get comfortable and kind of relaxed. It's a great moment. So obviously that they met each other. at the airport. Very rom-commy. Ted finally opening the present that he got from Keeley, and it's the snow globe of Richmond green that Keeley had given Barbara, but then Barbara had returned, so she gave it to Ted, which makes sense because that's right where he used to live. It's right, the pub's right there, where the busker played Hey Jude, and where Ted would play soccer with the people when he first got there. It's beautiful. Cut to Trent finding the copy of the books that he gave Beard, who has tons of markings on the pages, tons of little bookmarks with a message on the front saying he has a few notes, right? Beard didn't waste any time to go through the book and make corrections. On Ted's copy, he says, "Great job, Trent. I loved it." Except for on the bottom, it says, "Except change the title. It's not about him, and it never was." Cut to Keeley at her business with Barbara. Roy Kent being named the new manager, like we're getting the montage of where everybody goes. Roy Kent being named the new manager of Richmond. Him hanging Phoebe's drawings of breasts from her class on the wall in his new office, except for he put tape over her nipples in the same way Ted Lasso put tape over Keeley's nipples in the naked picture of her in Jamie's locker room in the first episode. You see Nate with his entire family in the window table at the restaurant. You see Sam taking a picture as part of the Nigerian national team. You have Jamie visiting his dad in rehab, which I assume that's where he was. Higgins barbecuing in the front of his house with everybody from the team there. The three fans purchasing one share, going in together to purchase one share of the team. May got herself a share as well. Cut to Trent at a book signing of his book with the new title, The Richmond Way. Keeley bringing Rebecca a proposal for AFC Richmond women's team, which is what I think the spinoff might be. Would make complete sense. Do a female version of Ted Lasso. Have Nate as the coach, right? If Roy is the coach of the men's team, Nate could be the coach of the women's team. Would be great. I would love to see that show. And you still have everybody there. You still have, it would be amazing. Who knows if they'll do it. Roy sees one of Ted's army men on the desk of Dr. Sharon as Roy is going to Dr. Sharon asking for help, trying to become a better person. Cut to Beard back as a coach with Roy and Nate as they hang the Believe sign back up. It is the old Believe sign that they put back together using gold to highlight the tears, which is Kitsugi traditional, which is the same thing that the psychic had when she gave the reading to Rebecca. The traditional Japanese art that involves repairing usually broken pottery or ceramics by using lacquer mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. The technique aims to emphasize and celebrate the history of the object by highlighting its fractures rather than concealing them, which is perfect. Beard getting married which is very clearly green screen, but Stonehenge. Danny's there with 2 dates. Cut to Ted landing in Kansas City, reading his book, which the book he's reading is How to Change Your Mind, The New Science of Psychedelics, which obviously his moment of clarity, which Coach Beard said they were a dud batch, but he still had the epiphany of coming up with Total Football. So interesting that's what the book that he's reading. When he lands and showing up at his home, and his son runs out excited to see him. Cut to Ted coaching his son's soccer team, his son missing a goal, and Ted giving him the same advice that he gave Sam in the first episode, to be a goldfish. And he looks at the camera, and he has a content, happy smile on his face. And that's how it ends. That's how the show ends. Ted Lasso, Season 3, Episode 12. Not all of my predictions came true. The Henry prophecy wasn't completely proven. Right? They didn't win the trophy. Nate didn't come back as a coach, but he did come back. Roy and Keeley never officially got back together. Sam never ended up with Rebecca or the chef, as I thought he might. I mean, maybe he did, but they just didn't show it. Rebecca did reconnect with the mystery man, but not because he saw her in the news or anything like that. It was just a random run-in at the airport. There was no more of the Jade and Nate storyline in this episode, but I assume they're still together, which I loved Jade, especially when she met Rupert. That was great. He seems very wealthy. Rebecca staying with the team, right? Maybe there'll be a female Richmond team coached by Nate. Who knows? I would love to see it. I would love that spinoff, right? Nate Shelley. I don't think they would name it that, but who knows? Despite the longer episodes and kind of the flat, uninterested character, I did enjoy, that Ted was kind of, not really, but there's definitely, Ted was pretty flat. And understandably, him leaving, big change for him. I enjoyed the season, but it did kind of feel like it was missing a little something. It didn't have the same, probably because the episodes were so much longer and there were more episodes, and they had a lot of things that they, there was a lot of references to things that happened early on in the season that happened with completely different context. So I don't know. I appreciate the final season. I rewatched the entire series after finishing this episode, and it's a show that I'm going to enjoy rewatching over and over again, But it was a great season. It made me laugh and it made me cry, as it's threatening to do right now. I'm channeling Roy Kent to try and choke back these tears as I'm trying to review this show, this last episode. It wasn't my favorite season. I would say, I don't know, but there's still great moments in this season. Danny scoring the goal with his face was one of my favorite moments. Also, I just love Danny. Danny Rojas, amazing character. Sam Obasanya, just such a great guy. I love all of them. Nate, redemption, good job. Really enjoyed it. And it was a pleasure to recap the show, for sure. It was the first time I ever tried recapping a show. I've done a bunch of them now, and this is the first one that's ended. Kind of the first. It's the last episode I've ever recorded for any podcast that I've done. I've produced, probably 15 to 20 different podcasts over the last decade plus. And usually when podcasts end, they just end, and I don't do a final episode. And this one, because it's a show and a recap, technically there's going to be a review that I'm going to put out on this feed, talking about the series, talking about the last season. But, for the recap, this is it. And it's, I'm kind of sad. But it was a pleasure to recap this show. I want to say thank you for everybody that stuck with me and watched, But before I go,
There's a sad sort of clanging from the clock on the hall, and the bells on the steeple too. And up in the nursery an absurd little bird is popping out to say cuckoo, cuckoo. Regretfully they tell us, but firmly they might tell us to say goodbye to you. long farewell, I'll Vita saying goodnight. I hate to go and leave this pretty sight. So long farewell, I'll Vita saying adieu, adieu, adieu to you and you and you. So long farewell, au revoir, I'd like to stay and taste my first champagne.
No.
So long farewell, I'll be there saying goodbye. I leave and heave a sigh and say goodbye, goodbye.
I'm
Glad to go, I cannot tell a lie. I flit, I float, I fleetly, safely fly. The sun has gone to bed, and so must I. So long farewell, I'll be just saying goodbye, 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 goodbye.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Ted Lasso podcast. Thank you all for believing in me. Please check out all the other podcasts that I produce over at inspireddisorder.com or youtube.com/inspireddisorder. I do other TV show episode recaps. I do movie and TV show reviews Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Top 5 rankings of movies in a variety of categories. It comes out Sunday. But as always, stay curious, stay kind, and stay gold, folks.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace. Ouch!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.